No one ever wants to have to hire a plaintiff lawyer, but often they're the last resort for desperate victims of sexual abuse. Stay tuned to hear from Jeannie Harrison about a case she prosecuted that made a huge difference in the life of a young college student.
Welcome to the YouTube channel of Michael J. Swanson. Michael is the author of How David Beats Goliath and is the CEO of Advocate Capital. And now, here's Michael.
Jeannie, thanks so much for being here today.
Mike, thanks for having me.
I know that one of the types of cases that your firm excels at is helping victims of sexual harassment and discrimination and things like that. Can you tell us about this case you were mentioning that you recently had that involved a graduate student in college?
Yes, that's a really important case. And the background there is that my client was a PhD student from China. And she came from a family that had invested everything they had in her development and her ability to get into a top school for engineering. And that's what she was going for a PhD in engineering. And so she had a specific PhD advisor. Of course, I'm not going to mention the names, but she had a PhD advisor. And that individual let her know, this advisor let my client know that if she wanted to graduate, and if she wanted to graduate on time, she was going to have to sleep with him.
Oh my goodness.
I'm not kidding. And this is not unusual either. And so she obviously was not willing to do that. He pursued her multiple times. And the way that this really came to a head was that she was in China at home, basically over the summer, and he was teaching at a university over the summer in China. They had to work on one of her papers. And so he said, well, why don't you come to the university over the specific 4-day period, and we'll work on your paper. So she went to the university. She was staying in the dorm, the housing there, meeting with him, and that's when he really this advisor became insistent and very clear that she was going to have to take care of his sexual needs if she wanted to get his help in finishing her PhD program, or if she wanted to graduate on time. And she was despondent over what she was being told she had to do. Yeah. In China, not surprisingly, there is not the same attention to the right to privacy, individual privacy, that we have here in California. So what my client ended up doing was hitting record on her laptop while this professor was insisting that she sleep with him and take care of his needs to get his help so that she could finish her paper and finish out her PhD program. And he was explicit that he had done this for many years with many of his PhD students, and that this is the way it worked with him. And so she left after a day and a half of being subjected to that. It made her sick. She was vomiting. This is totally typical with victims of that kind of trauma, of sexual trauma. And so she left and then eventually found her way to me. We ended up basically having the video and we had the audio translated and transcribed and put on top of the video, and eventually got into a mediation and, showed opposing counsel the video. Of course, opposing counsel had not believed our client. They never do, because the tenured professor denied it and said that our client was crazy. It really was very impactful for her. And we explained that ongoing harm and what this was going to look like for her. She had to explain what was going on and why she was going to take an extra year to get through her program. She had to explain that to her parents. It's very shameful for her. In addition, we were able, as a result of coming forward and providing all of this information and going through this process, we were ultimately able, to make it so that individual is no longer preying upon victims. And so that does change things significantly, because no one else is going to have to go through it.
And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people don't think about when it comes to torts, is that certainly plaintiff lawyers make changes and positive differences in their clients' lives, but they also make the world many times a safer place. So there are future engineering PhD students now who won't be subject to that professor.
That's absolutely right. And we interviewed some of his prior students, and they absolutely went through the same thing, and their lives were impacted. They're still ashamed, and they look back on their PhD experience, with embarrassment. It's a painful part of their lives instead of something that they rightfully should be so proud of. So I'm happy that he's not out there anymore.
Yeah. Wow, what a great story. I'm so thankful that there are contingency fee lawyers like you that will take these very difficult cases on, prosecute them sometimes, I know, for a year or two, and you are the keys to the courtroom and the keys to success for your clients. So we appreciate you sharing that story. Thank you so much, Jeannie.
Thank you for having me here, Mike.
Thanks for watching. Send your questions or comments to Michael at mike@howdavidbeatsgoliath.com.